So I'm going to show you how to cook a Gambian meal, which was shown in one of the presentations about Gambia, and it's known by a number of names. You might know it as benachin, which tends to be the Gambian name for it, or chebuyak if you come from Senegal, or it's a variation of red rice or jollof rice, and it's one of my family's favourite dishes. There are different ways that you can cook it, but I'm going to show you the way that I do it. So these are your ingredients that you're going to need. Vegetables, you can interchange some of them. So I've got carrots, green pepper, onions, butternut squash and cabbage, but you can do other things. You can do other types of pumpkin. You could use aubergine instead, and you can use other peppers. Now then, for the meat, I've got some garlic to put in the meat and some vinegar as a sort of marinade. I've got something called magi cube, which comes from the Gambia. If you don't have access to magi cube, you can just use a beef stock cube. That's completely fine. I've got tomato paste, which is for the sauce that turns the rice red. If you have access to this, which I think is unlikely, this is tomato powder that would be used in Gambia, but tomato paste works fine. We need rice. We prefer broken rice. It just works better, and that's what you would find in Gambia. You can find it from most Chinese supermarkets. Oil for frying, chili pepper if you like your food spicy, and black pepper to add some taste to it. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is to chop up my beef into small parts, chop up the garlic, mix it with the beef, add some vinegar and some black pepper. So I'll show you. I'm going to put my garlic onto the beef. By the way, you can do this meal with fish or with chicken, but this is just the example we've got today, and it's also my favourite one. So I'll put the garlic all over. If you have heaps of time, you can do this way in advance and let it marinate, then it will take on the taste of the garlic much better. It's quite late here and we're meant to be having dinner soon, so I'm going to do this pretty fast and not leave it for any time at all. Okay, so we've got the garlic and we're going to grind some pepper onto it. I also love black pepper, so I'm going to grind loads on. It's much better if you just have powder black pepper. It'll be a lot easier and save you lots of time. Okay, I'm going to stop there just for the sake of time, but I might add some more while it's cooking. Okay, now then, we're going to add some vinegar. This is just a rough amount. Normally I would just squirt it in, but just to show you, so maybe 5 spoons of vinegar. It doesn't really matter too much. It just flavours the beef a little bit and it means that there's some liquid in there. In fact, I'm just going to spray a bit more on just so everything is covered. Right, for the beef, you're going to need either a frying pan or a big saucepan like this. What I like to do is fry the beef in the same pan as I'm going to boil the vegetables so that the vegetables have the same taste. If you don't want to mix them, that's fine, do it in a separate pan. Also, if you're vegetarian, you can do this meal and just leave out the meat, that's fine too. So I am going to turn on the heat. You'll just need a little bit of oil in the bottom, enough so that it doesn't stick. Gambians absolutely love their oil, so they would probably put a lot more on, just for the sake of people's hot arteries. That's all I'm going to use. Might look a lot to you. Let the oil heat up a little bit. And then when it's hot, we're going to add the beef and fry it until it's properly cooked through. So it should be brown all over. Definitely check with an adult who's used to cooking when you're making this meal so that you know that things are properly cooked through. You do need to make sure you have enough oil so that the beef doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan. I've got my heat up quite high for this, and you're going to need to keep stirring as well. Okay, I'm going to pour it in. If your oil is really hot, you might find that it starts shooting everywhere and popping, and that's because of all the vinegar, the liquid and the oil don't particularly like each other. So I'm just gonna fry that for a bit until it's properly cooked. In the meantime, we're going to sort out the vegetables, so bear with me. What I've started doing here is peeling the vegetables. So if you've got things like carrot or pumpkin, you will need to make sure that all the skin is peeled off. This is my little discard pile that will go in, in the vegetable compost later. So these carrots have already been peeled. You can see the skin's gone. Don't eat me. Okay, your pumpkin will need skinning as well. So this side I've already started peeling it. So make sure that all of that's gone. Then I'll show you what we're doing next with the. So the carrots and the pumpkin are peeled, no more pumpkin face. And the onions have been peeled as well. I may have shed a tear in the peeling of the onions. Okay, right then, with the cutting, make sure that your carrots have had the ends chopped off them. So, do make sure an adult is present with you. Right, for Benachin, all the vegetables need to be quite chunky. If you've got long skinny carrots, cutting them in half is just fine. But whatever you do, make sure that all your vegetables are roughly the same size. Otherwise, some will cook much faster than the other. So even with my onions, I'm just going to cut them in half. If you want, you could cut them into quarters. That is completely fine. For example, that one's quite big. I might just chop that into quarters. There we go. Right then, with your pepper, make sure that you get out the insides. We'll chuck them out. Make sure you get out all the seeds that are in there. A whole pepper is probably fine. So this is for a family of 4 people, and normally I like to make extra so that we have more for the following day. We just love this meal and we will eat and eat and eat. Okay, so the pepper also needs to be in fairly big chunks. You can use red or yellow pepper. I just like to vary up the colours so it looks fun. There you go, you might leave it like that. And your pumpkin is going to be similar, so chop it up. I'm expecting this to have seeds inside. There you go, you'll need to make sure that you take out the seeds. Ugh. Ooh, if you really like saving things, you can save pumpkin seeds and cook them, and they taste really good. That might be an extra idea. Make sure that they're all gone because the part inside doesn't really taste that great. You want to get out all the stringy stuff. This is the boring bit. Right then, now on the end of your pumpkin, just like with the carrot and this end too, there's a little part that you need to chop off. I have a really wobbly board here. Okay, and then chop it into chunks. So carrots and pumpkin take the longest to cook. You want them all to be a similar size. So make sure you chop off that end bit. I'm going to leave this last bit of pumpkin just because it's probably getting boring for you, but I will still include it. Now with your cabbage, you also want this in big chunks. This is not a Gambian cabbage. A Gambian cabbage would be one of the solid round ones, but sadly the supermarket didn't stock them. So this one is second best. My parents grow loads and loads of chard and kale in the garden, and they would have liked me to use that, but it's not really Gambian. So we're going with the closest we can get. So big chunks. It's fine if you leave the end part on, that will hold all the leaves together, but you just might be a bit chewy when it comes to eating it. So I'm going to cut it into quarters. To be quite honest, for my family that is going to be plenty, so I might put this part back in the fridge for another day, but use as much as you want. Now we're going to have another look at what's happened with the beef. So it's all a nice brown colour. Mix that round. See, everything is brown. That's great, it means it's cooked through. You could try a piece just to be sure. Now, I don't want that for the time being, so I'm going to tip my beef out into another bowl. Right. Make sure you turn the gas off if you're not using the gas. I'm going to pour my beef into this little glass bowl. Okay, make sure you get out all the meat. You don't want any parts of it overcooking with the vegetables. Okay, and this little bowl of beef here, I'm just going to set to one side and Okay, we're going to boil the vegetables, so make sure that you've got a full kettle of boiling water ready to pour in. I've just boiled mine. I'm going to use the same saucepan that I cooked the meat in, just because I like it to have a bit of a meaty taste and have some of the garlic left in it. Okay, you're going to need it on a high heat. As I said, Gambians love oil, so we're going to add a little bit more oil and let that heat up just a bit. Now, this is the part where, if you have some, if you're in Gambia, you can use aja tomato powder, but if you're in the UK and that's not available, tomato paste is just as good. So as soon as the oil has heated up a bit, we're going to add some of the tomato paste. Now, I would say maybe 2 tablespoons, but you can change it depending on how tomatoey you want your vegetables to taste. Afterwards, we're going to use this water to cook the rice in, so it's also what gives the rice its red nature. So I can hear the oil is starting to spit a little bit, so I'm going to add a couple of spoons worth of tomato paste. Once you've added it, it's good to mix it around just so that it doesn't burn. There's not much liquid in there, so it could easily start burning. So hopefully you can see how much is in there. I've probably put a bit much today, but hey ho, we'll have really red rice. Now, I really love chili, so I'm going to add a little bit of chili. I would say about teaspoons worth. It depends on you how much you and your family enjoy. And then you're just going to mix that all in with the oil so that the oil is nice and tomatoey. It might not properly mix, but you'll start to smell a difference. Hopefully it dissolves a little bit. Okay, once it's partially dissolved, you're going to add your water. Now watch out at this point, because hot oil and water don't react well, so it might shoot up a little bit. I'm going to add just a little bit. Can you see the bubbles? So just start with a little bit and then pour in the rest. Now I may need to boil more water because you need enough water to cover the vegetables. Yeah, I think I will have to just stir it around to make sure that the tomato paste is properly mixed in. I'm now going to add a magi cube. This has come from Gambia, okay? Alternatively, you can use an oxo cube, just any kind of beef stock cube, that should be fine too. Gambians absolutely love magi cube. It goes into everything, it even goes into bread sandwiches. And kids love putting it on lemon and sucking the lemons as well. Okay. Yeah, do make sure that you've washed your hands beforehand. Okay, that looks like it's well mixed in. So we're going to add the vegetables now. Okay, watch out for your fingers. It might be better if you use a spoon. Okay, just gently place them in so the water doesn't spit back at you. What you'll notice is that I have left the green peppers behind just because green peppers cook really quickly. So I'm only going to add them in the last 10 minutes. Okay, just going to go for it now. Great. Okay, there's just enough water. I'm going to go and boil some more just so that they're properly covered and I've got enough liquid in there to use for the rice later. Great. Oh, the vegetables will need to boil for about 20 minutes. I think it's a good idea if you poke a carrot with a fork and just check that it's cooked. So while the vegetables are cooking, we're going to measure out the rice. Now, when I cook my rice, it's a bit hit and miss every time. It always works out fine, but I like to do it the Gambian way without any normal measuring scales. So what I would suggest is that you do half a cup of rice per person. So in my family, there's 4 of us, but we like to have a bit of extra. So I'm going to do about 2.5 cups. So 1, 2. If our dog is lucky, he might get a bit as well. 2 and a generous half. Okay, now if you are in Gambia, you would normally wash your rice out as well because it makes it extra sticky. So you wash the starch off. So I'm going to show you. Washing your rice is really simple. You just need cold water. Fill up the bowl with water. Mix it around a bit. You might notice that the water goes a whitish colour, and that's just because some of the starch is coming off. So mix it round. So in Gambia, when you buy a sack of rice, there's normally all sorts of creepy crawlies in there as well, and so this is the opportunity to drown them and grab them out. And sometimes you have to pick the rice as well just to make sure that all the rice husks are out, and sometimes you find gravel and bits of dirt in there as well. Thankfully, most rice that you can buy here is pretty clean, and so I don't think you can see anything on the top of that. I'm just going to tip it out. You don't need to get all the water out, it's fine because we're going to boil the rice. Just get as much as you can out. And weirdly, that will change the consistency of the rice slightly when it's... Right, we're ready to cook the rice. What we need is the liquid to cook the rice in. Now, what I have done in advance is removed some of the liquid, about 1 litre of the liquid from the vegetables, ready to use for the rice. Be really careful doing that. Either use some kind of scoop to scoop it out or get an adult to help you pour it. And the vegetables still need to be in there. Now I'm going to put this to one side just for a second. You might remember we didn't put the green peppers in with the rest of the vegetables. Now the ones that are in there have been cooking for about 20 minutes. They probably only need max 5 minutes longer. And what I'm going to do is turn them down to a really low heat. I'm going to turn them down to 1 and leave them to boil. Now what I like to do is to mix my meat with the vegetables. However, my sister is vegetarian, so I'm going to leave them out this time, but it's up to you what you want to do. It does mean that the vegetables get a bit of taste from the meat, and the meat gets a bit of the vegetable sauce as well, which I do like. Okay, right. Rice only needs to be on a very low heat, maybe the lowest heat. It needs to simmer. So you've got a tiny flame there. That is on, even if you can't see it. Okay, going to pour your rice in. Don't worry, I have washed my hands. It's all going to be cooked. Make sure all your rice goes in. Now then, some people say that you need to measure out your water for rice. I have never measured out water. Sometimes I need to add a bit more later on, but it tends to work out. And the general rule of thumb is just make sure that there is double the water, to rice. So if your rice is about 1 inch deep, make sure you've got about 1 inch of water covering the rice. That was just enough. Do keep an eye on it though. There is a way to absolutely kill rice, and that's if it's too soggy at the end. So my grandma used to cook her rice and then strain it with a sieve afterwards. Now we are not making risotto, so there should be no more water left in your rice by the end. So normally it takes about maybe 15 to 20 minutes. I like to taste it along the way just to check that all the rice is cooked properly. If it does look really dry and it's not cooked yet, then I would add a bit more boiling water. I'm just going to give it a stir, but then once I've stirred it at the beginning, I'm going to leave it. If you keep stirring it, it just makes the rice really stodgy. Just ignore what I said before. The vegetables have needed a little longer, but basically just keep boiling them until they're soft. So I'm just going to give you an example of what we're looking for. So here's a carrot. Just use a fork. And if the fork goes right through the carrot, might even break it, then it's ready. Same with the cabbage. Just make sure it's soft enough for a fork to get through. And then you can turn off the heat and just leave the lid on so it stays warm. Now, what I've done is I gave in the end and just added the meat to the sauce because it was going cold. So this will keep it warm, and it also adds a bit more taste, and yeah. And this is just so you can see how the rice is doing. I did have to add a little bit of extra water just because nearly all the water was finished and it was still quite dry. But it's still on a low heat, and it will just keep going. Keep it cooking until all the water has gone, but do make sure that the rice is soft and edible. So just use a fork. And here is the final dish. In the end, the vegetables and the rice took a bit longer than I expected to cook, but you just keep checking until they're about right. And you'll see that the rice has gone on the bottom with the vegetables and the meat piled on top. This should be more than enough for 3 people. And what I've got on the side here is magi sauce and some chili sauce. We like to add that just to add some extra flavour. So enjoy your Gambian meal of benachin or chabiap or jollof rice, whatever you'd like to call it. We're going to enjoy this now.